I can't quite put my finger on it. You know, I think it's the pointy hats. It's something about Dragon Princes. I mean, don't get me wrong, definitely an awesome unit, one of the coolest High Elf units. I am, of course, very biased towards heavy cavalry, but I don't know. They do definitely look better in black, I will say, which we'll see in just a minute, but at this point, they are here with Alarielle and the High Elves up against the Skaven. We've got two Dragon Princes and a Frostheart Phoenix, which is a nice fun pick. Couple of Shadow Warriors, decent in this matchup. Illyrian Reavers, of course, Rangers, very good in this matchup. Single unit of Archers. And up against Skaven with some sneaky Assassins. Snitch here with, yeah, just Snitch and some Gutter Runners, I guess, actually. The Assassins, also Jezzails for sniping. We've got Clan Rats here. Yeah, some Grinders, a big box of Rat Ogres in the back there, and Clan Vulcan's Tail Slashers, Warlock Engineer, and a Plague Priest, so nice caster force there, and very polite to not bring the Mortars because they are just very rude and are a giant danger to any cavalry units in this matchup, but since there are no Mortars, Dragon Princes are going to be quite strong. Dragon Princes are an interesting shock cavalry. They have really good stats in terms of attack and defense. They also have physical resistance, very high charge, don't really have any special stats. They do have fire resistance, I guess, which is kind of cool. But 44-42 with Martial Mastery active with 80 charge bonus. Absolutely massive, among the highest charge bonus in the game. They do get stopped here, though, on the charge. Very nicely done with that Warp Grinder. Immediately Alarielle says, okay, let's just go for a pitched melee engagement. We have decent sustained combat stats, and I can throw this Star of Avalorn to keep them healed, which is another big benefit of Dragon Princes. They do have the best healers in the game with Alarielle and Teclis, two of the best healers, I should say, in the game, supporting them, which is absolutely massive. Rat Ogres and other units kind of blob in here for a big nasty blob fight, but the Frostheart Phoenix being in here actually debuffing the melee attack of all these units. Skaven units tend not to have the greatest melee attack in the world, like only 17 attack there for Rat Ogres with that attack debuff, so those Dragon Princes took negligible damage. I don't know, didn't even lose any unit models there. Okay, lost 2 unit models on 1 unit. Very impressive, considering how long they were in that kind of sustained blob fight there. But all the meanwhile, the Rangers are coming in and cleaning up a lot of this chaff, as they do. Clan Rats definitely don't stand a chance against Rangers. And the Archers, Shadow Warriors, doing a good job kind of shooting in at these Rat Ogres, too. They've got 1 unit taken care of, and start moving on to this other unit as well there. Looks like Flensing Ruin being cast on Alarielle. A little bit of a misplay in my opinion. If you were to cast that on the Cav Blob, it's going to net you more value, because it will probably actually kill some models. But the Dragon Princes charge through, just start wrecking literally everything. Even Rat Ogres, if they get caught out on the open field, are just going to get destroyed by Dragon Princes. So, very nicely done by Norman here, just kind of ping-ponging back and forth between these different units. Again, the Grinders come into play and try and freeze them in place, but a nice Shield of Thorns to give them even more physical resistance to resist the Rat Ogre attacks. Grinders do actually do melee attack, magic attacks rather, but they have very low melee attacks. So they're really not going to do too much here. Another Earthblood just to help them keep sustaining, and yeah, they're going to go ahead and pull out of there while they can. Jezzail's getting mopped up here. The Frostheart Phoenix, also very fast, can kind of help pressure units off, but really doesn't hit too hard. 40 charge and only 35 attack, and I mean, decent weapon strength. 400 weapon strength is solid, don't get me wrong, but just kind of flimsy offensive stats otherwise. But the defensive stats are decent, and that attack debuff we saw come in handy, very much so in that big blob earlier. At this point, things aren't looking too great for the Skaven. The lines have all been broken, you know, defenses are shattered. The casters being broken is also a big deal too, at least this one. No more Howling Warp Gale, which he did have to try and control Alarielle's units. The Flensing Ruin is one. I don't know that I would take that unless you have something with Arcane Conduit or some kind of magic regeneration, because it's a relatively expensive spell. It does debuff armor, which is kind of nice, but the damage isn't as good as something like, I don't know, Final Transmutation. I don't know if it's necessarily worth the magic in that case. Just spamming, I think, Warp Lightning is probably going to be a little bit of a better option. But there's another nice healing sustain here. You can see these Dragon Princes are almost up to their healing cap, which is really nice. It is possible to heal cap a few Dragon Princes against few factions with Alariel, or Teclis, to be honest. You can heal cap them, probably with Teclis too. Alariel, of course, with that nice AoE star, synergizes just so well with them. Teclis probably synergizes with the ROR a little bit better, but really fun stuff. I like that use of them there. Nice to see him clean up a whole bunch of Skaven. Rangers also helping to clean up a whole bunch of Skaven. Yeah, Alariel doing her healing sustain thing, and a nice use of the Frostart Phoenix to kind of debuff and help these Dragon Princes be even that much tankier. So, awesome replay. I do have one more to show you guys from a stream, I don't know, a month or two ago at this point. Let's go ahead and get to it. Oh yeah, now that's more like it. The black and gold color scheme, that is just beautiful. Beautiful stuff, and a very cool build from Dactor here. Some people might hate this. I think it's actually really, really awesome because it utilizes a couple of underrated units, an underrated Lord, and of course our feature Tuxedo Princes. We've got a Life Mage here, a Lithanar, 3 Shadow Walkers, the Omen of Asuryan, a couple of Reaver Archers out there, the Dragon Princes, and that's it. Basically going to be playing pseudo Wood Elf style, more or less, using these Shadow Walkers as if they were Way Watchers, firing at these nasty pigs here. Warherd of Morgur. And the Dragon Princes come in to protect, and this is going to kind of be the strategy here, is that the Dragon Princes countercharge, try and screen the Shadow Walkers, and they just take this nice kind of asymmetric engagement for the Beastmen for Killerinu here. We've seen on the channel quite a bit. A couple Bestigor Herd, some Razorgore Herds, Minotaurs with shields, Abrasium and Lord of Shadows, Morgur the Shadow Gave, of course, and Gore Herds, some Ungors, and a couple pigs that have already been just walloped by Shadow Walkers and by the Dragon Princes. So like I said, this is kind of like a pseudo Wood Elf build, except, you know, instead of squishy Wild Riders, you have nice tanky Dragon Princes, who, although they're going to get rear charged here by Minotaurs, the physical resistance, the melee defense, and their speed will all kind of give them some protection. Still probably going to lose a handful of models there, but all the rest is looking good. Can get a little bit of Earth Blood to restore, and the Omen of Asuryan popping down there in the back to make sure those Razorgore Herds don't come back. Lyrian Reaver Archers pulling up, getting counterfired a little bit by Ungor Raiders, very cost effective there, but it is definitely a kite game. There's no question about that, and a lot of people are not the biggest fans of kiting, and I should distinguish, kiting as a legitimate playstyle should not be seen as anything close to what people would term draw kiting. I would just term cowardice, which is just playing not to win on ladder, basically. We won't go too much into that right now, but this is actually a legitimate kite. You know, you have these missile units shooting the whole time, and more importantly, the countercharge units are very important in any real efficient kite strategy, because your opponent is going to have some kind of mobility unless they really have gone just wild with their build, or they're playing dwarfs, to catch you, right? And you're going to need your mobility to be able to countercharge in, hit hard, and pull away, and that is one thing. Dragon Princes, their speed and their high charge allows them to hit and run better than a lot of other high-tier shock cavalry units, certainly. Physical resistance, like I said, helps against incidental damage, although their HP, we'll have to see, I believe is lower than a lot of other top-tier cavalry units. A really nice placement of a Penumbral Pendulum there by Killerinu. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities to fight in melee, so he's taking advantage of it here. Does get a pretty good engagement, but look at those Minotaurs, man. Minotaurs with shields even, 45 melee defense. The most tanky version of Minotaur still just getting cleaned up by these Shadow Walkers and by the Dragon Prince charges. Dragon Prince is definitely having to pull away there as the Omen of Asuryan acts as a bit of an anchor, but another nice countercharge in. Just look at the damage, the HP pool of these Razorgore Herds just drop, and that's that 80 charge bonus. Some fire from the Shadow Walkers definitely helps, but that massive charge against any low armor unit, they're just going to delete them from the game, basically, more or less. A nice Earthblood even hits a little bit of those Shadow Walkers too, which is great, but of course the Princes are the focus, and they're going to hammer home against these kind of gross, pale Ungor Raiders. The scabby ones that are in Morgur's Warherd. Goreherds with shields also coming up the hill. Illyrian Reaver Archers acting as another supporting kind of mobile element here, just distracting over on the side. And look at these Dragon Princes. 76 kills already, 78 there. Definitely climbing very rapidly, and a lot of those kills are against these lower model count pig units, which is quite impressive. Shadow Walker's also been able to stay safe for the most part, firing from the hill. Omen of Asurian drops that absolute cone of fire diarrhea. And that is just beautiful, ripping apart the 2xCast, who are themselves pretty big threats at this point. Their high armor makes them a lot more resistant to the Dragon Prince charges, although they still don't have much melee defense, so that massive charge bonus means you're basically hitting, what, maximum? Yeah, 24 melee defense, you've got 44 attack here, plus the 80 charge, so you are at 90% hit chance, definitely, you know, on that charge. And man, oh man, absolutely insane. As the Omen of Asurian just rips through. I remember seeing this one live on stream. I was just absolutely flabbergasted that this build actually worked. I mean, it makes sense in hindsight. You know, the poison in particular of the Shadow Walkers does help control the movements, and that just accentuates the Dragon Prince's speed that much more. You can really do the crazy cycle charge hit and run with this, and it's worked out pretty well. Killarinu's definitely no slouch. Has played this decently well. Getting into a situation against a kite build like this is pretty tough, almost as tough as the kiting itself is, depending on how many range units you have. The Ungor Raiders have done a pretty good job trying to counterfire the Reaver Archers, but the Shadow Walkers, because they have just so much more range than the Raiders, Raiders are really not going to be able to counterfire them. 115 compared to 180, so there's just not much of a prayer of them getting close enough. Realistically, like a Cygor would probably be the best counter for these Shadow Walkers, but Cygor also, you'd have to maintain visibility while it's shooting, because of course the Shadow Walkers have stock. But another nice Penumbral Pendulum there, scything through the Shadow Walkers. They've still got 34 models though online, 41 there, 42 there, so most of the fighting power is still going. And the Dragon Princes doing their thing, pulling away, pulling back, rinse and repeat. That is the cycle charge, right? Classic cycle charge. And of course, totally tournament legal, as the archers still fulfill the attacking rule, of course. Got these other Illyrian Reavers also coming in, fulfilling the attacking rule, so it's all perfectly above board. Some people don't like it. It can be very frustrating to play against, I will admit, but you have to respect the skill that it takes to pull off. And as someone who's tried it pretty unsuccessfully a number of times and only legitimately pulled it off a handful of times, it's probably one of the hardest ways you can play the game, to be honest. You really, like, it's very unforgiving for positional mistakes especially, but yeah, in the late game now, these Shadow Walkers can take advantage of their good melee stats and anti-infantry, try and come in and clean up some of these units in melee, and of course the Dragon Princes are here also to provide a nice shock hammer rear charge wherever that needs to come. The Reaver Archers get routed there. Dragon Prince is now moving in on these couple of exposed light infantry here. A beautiful charge. And yeah, the Walker's moving over. A little bit of more Earth Bloods to sustain. Omen of Asurian also hanging around, still very healthy. Going to be of actual terror for the Beastmen. Great stuff. Arcane Phoenix is an interesting one. Just all of these units, I would say, the Dragon Princes are obviously the Life Mage is the most common, but beyond her, the Dragon Princes are the next most common pick. Maybe Reaver Archers are decently common, although I kind of, yeah, I kind of called them underrated. I guess I'm not the biggest fan. I know other people are big fans of them, but that being said, Dragon Princes in their beautiful black uniforms cleaning up on the foreground there. These Shadow Walkers at this point probably want to come into melee and just try and clean up those Bestigor. And yeah, Dragon Princes still have more targets to try and charge in and clean up here. Now that they're engaged, something has to stay engaged, but the the Shadow Walkers are here, so the Dragon Princes can keep cycle charging. Omen of Asurian comes in, drops its cone of diarrhea once more. Morgar's still fighting, the Bestigor though, and pretty much everything else is gone because of all the leadership penalties and just being dead to anti-infantry and massive charge. And that's the way the Beastman cookie crumbles. Quite an impressive show from Dactor. Very fun and interesting build. I know a lot of people aren't going to love it, but I mean, it's got Lithanar. How can you hate that? And it's got Shadow Walkers and Dragon Princes. I mean, very cool and unique, and probably barely tournament legal, but still a lot of fun. Yeah, I think there was enough models for this to actually be legal. I remember checking in the stream, but an interesting one, definitely. And credit to Killerino, a rough one to be put through there, but put up a hell of a fight, all things considered. Dragon Princes, though, 153, 159 kills, XP chevrons to go around, actually. As well as the Shadow Walkers getting some kills, the Reaver Archers getting kills and chevrons, 125 for these Reaver Archers. Somehow didn't get a chevron, but I guess just cleaning up a lot of routing Ungors, which is a very efficient use of them. 54 for Lithnar himself. Really wasn't challenged at all in melee, which is definitely nice. Life Mage, of course, doing her thing. 116 kills for the Omen of Asurian. So just all around a lot of fun. I remember seeing this build and just loving it. But quickly to just leave you with a handful of comparisons real quick. Yeah, compared to some other higher tier shock cavalry. The one I would say that is pretty clearly better, probably not the best, but second best, to Blood Knights, Grail Knights, for 100 more points. I mean, the magic damage, and especially in a head-to-head engagement, like Dragon Princes just lose so hard to Grail Knights because of the anti-large and the magic damage. Grail Knights also have physical resistance, right? So they're probably the most directly comparable unit. Grail Knights also immune to psychology and perfect vigor, which are two things that the Dragon Princes lack, although they do have better sustained combat stats, even just baseline, actually slightly worse, but definitely with martial mastery active. And of course they can easily get magic attacks from Alariel. He has this AoE ability here which does give that, and the immune to psychology, so you can pretty much make them into Grail Knights. Perfect vigor you can get as well if you use a Life Mage that has access to regrowths. Alariel does not. Still a very strong combination. And yeah, I mean, the 80 charge is pretty good. We could also compare to Chaos Knights with Lances, who are, again, 1500. They do have quite a bit more HP, which is a consideration, kind of offset by the physical resistance, right? They do have more armor, and actually worse, a little bit better, sorry, sustained combat stats, although they do lack that martial mastery. So, same charge bonus, a little bit more weapon strength for the Chaos Knights. The Dragon Princes do, if you can keep this martial mastery active for as long as possible, they are going to be more effective, and that's why healing is so important for them. And also you need to be very careful of like monsters or artillery that can do a lot of shock damage to them and kill models very quickly, whether that be cannons, you know, certain monster types that have big splash attacks and do a lot of weapon damage, especially anti-large, can be a big problem. But Blood Knights, definitely the best in this class, are a lot more expensive. I mean, 300 points, pretty significant difference in price there. Blood Knights, still less charge though, less weapon strength. They do have the anti-large, obviously, which is a significant amount of anti-large too. Puts their weapon strength way up over, but still. Against infantry, Dragon Princes are going to hit harder. Less melee defense baseline, but of course they do have the martial mastery. They're not undead though, which is obviously major. Don't have access to lore of vampires. They have much worse healing than Blood Knights, Dragon Princes do. You don't have the same passive healing sources, you don't have the model resurrection and everything else that comes with being on the vampire counts, and of course you're not functionally unbreakable like the Blood Knights are, because crumbling is pretty negligible, honestly. Dragon Prince is definitely not as good as Blood Knights, but still pretty solid for this price, but they can fall into a lot of the pitfalls of Elite Cavalry, which, as I mentioned, is just stuff that can kill models very quickly. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.